Despite the fact that most information returns are created in ignorance of their import, they will nonetheless be taken by tax agencies as concrete evidence that the payment reported on them was a payment of income. That is, these information returns will be taken as deliberate testimony that the reported amount of money paid was paid as a consequence of the recipient engaging in a taxable activity. Tax agencies will vigorously attempt to frighten or fool those about whom these information returns are created into adopting that testimony on their own tax returns and accepting the resulting tax liabilities. Or the agencies will independently seek to collect money based on this information return testimony. You'd think there would be a law against creating false information returns, and in fact, there are several. The most important of these is the commandment, by which we are instructed to not bear false witness against our neighbor at any time or about anything. There are also a number of man-made laws specifically aimed at the creation of false information returns. I'm sorry to say that they are rarely enforced. This isn't surprising when you consider that the prosecutors work for the same branch of government as the tax agency that encourages widespread misunderstanding about these legal instruments and their effects, the consequences of which are the presumptions of tax liabilities which otherwise wouldn't exist, and a river of money flowing into the Treasury. Of course, the prosecutors have their excuses. For example, in order to punish someone for creating a false information return, there has to be a complaining victim, which is to say, someone who knows that the information returns created about him are false, and how they will work against his interests. Since the campaign to keep Americans in the dark about these things is so mature and effective, there have been very few victims filing complaints. This is not an excuse a lax prosecutor would probably be comfortable explaining to his mother, I suspect, unless his mother is Ma Barker. However, there is another, more honorable excuse available to a government prosecutor wanting to ease his conscience about standing by while false information returns flood the mail from January to April every year. Acknowledging the basic principle of due process, that all evidence is subject to rebuttal and correction, and that without an alternative the courts would be perpetually clogged with lawsuits and prosecutions, Congress has made statutory provisions by which Americans victimized by false information returns can fix the situation all on their own. Those provisions are also covered in the second part of Cracking the Code. Readers of Cracking the Code, The Fascinating Truth About Taxation in America, have been acting for some time now on their newfound understanding of what is really subject to the income tax, the meaning and effect of information returns, and the statutory provisions Congress has made for victims of false testimony. What you're about to see is a sampling of what that has meant to these good folks. As you view the following images, please understand that, although the subject is too large to be properly addressed in this short film, there is a reason why the income tax is limited in the way that it is, and why Congress has provided the corrective mechanisms in the law that I have mentioned. Very briefly put, it is because those who framed the Constitution intended for the people to retain direct personal control of their earnings and wealth. The founders made constitutional provisions to that effect, and the income tax fully conforms to those provisions and that purpose. It is only the carefully cultivated ignorance of the law's details that has allowed this truly benign and lawful tax to take on the characteristics of the voracious monster that most Americans imagine it to be today. This most important aspect of the income tax story is the focus of the third part of Cracking the Code. More on that must be left to the reading of the book. In the meantime, here is what can be accomplished by those who know the truth. Those who have not engaged in a taxable activity, or have not done so to the extent of gains beyond the statutory exemption amount, generally owe no income taxes for the relevant period, regardless of the amount of money earned. In such cases, knowledgeably acting to correct any erroneous information return allegations about one's earnings establishes that fact legally. In most cases in which money has been withheld or paid in, or is available as a credit from a previous year, knowledgeably correcting erroneous information return allegations and presenting an appropriate claim establishes legally that everything withheld or paid in is to be refunded. And I mean everything. Social Security and Medicare contributions included. What you're seeing right now are refunds secured by readers of Cracking the Code, thanks to corrections and claims submitted over the last 18 months or so. Some of these thoroughly educated Americans have secured as many as a dozen such refunds so far. Also displayed here are Treasury Department transcripts showing zero balances for readers' accounts, levy releases, garnished money reimbursements, notice of deficiency closing notices, and every other kind of beneficial consequence that can result from a complete knowledge of the Internal Revenue laws. The more than $1 million in recovered and retained property shown here has returned to, or remained in, the pockets of Americans from all walks of life, including teachers and truckers, doctors and lawyers, nurses, engineers, CPAs, students, etc. And what is displayed here is just the tip of the iceberg. Only a fraction of the readers of Cracking the Code who have recovered property withheld against the possibility of tax liabilities which did not actually exist have generously furnished me with images of their checks and other documents for posting, both here and on my website, losthorizons.com. Many more have reported their successes in knowledgeably invoking the law, but didn't think to scan the resulting checks and notices. Many more still have doubtless enjoyed similar successes, but not communicated the fact to me at all. There are, after all, many thousands of copies of Cracking the Code in circulation now. The book is currently in its 6th printing. Copies can be found in libraries around the country. Cracking the Code is even being read in Australia, Eastern Europe, Canada, and Japan. LostHorizons.com logs more than 1.2 million Cracking the Code related hits each and every month.